And then, again, just a reminder to everybody, we have a great party tonight with the Spasmatics. How many of you remember the Spasmatics? How many of you remember the 80s? All right, great. All right, well, the 80s are back. So you don't have to remember the things you did in the 80s, but just bring some of the vibe of the 80s with you. All right, enjoy this great session about visual effects journeys with our friends from Wētā.
Hi, my name is Naida Albright. I work with filmmakers for Red Digital Cinema out of our studio in Hollywood. I'm so excited to be here. I was invited by fabulous Dave Gouget at Wētā, and I've just met them, and I'm very excited to be speaking with these women on the panel to my left. I'm going to speak a little bit about each one, starting with Beck here. This is Beck Veitch. She won a VES award for War of the Planet of the Apes, worked on the Batman specifically for the Batmobile chase, and finished Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I want to introduce lead facial motion animator Bex Leybourne. Specializes in creation of computer-generated facial animation in visual effects movies. She also received a VES award this year for her work on Aviator, The Way of Water, and also worked on Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Good. Well done. And we've got Joanna Davison, CG supervisor, worked as a lighting TD and since worked as a lighting lead for Rise of the Planet of the Apes, changing to CG supervisor on the Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, Thor, Love and Thunder, and Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Welcome.
Thanks, Naida.
I'm happy to say that red was used in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, so that is the only connection we have here. Okay, so this panel's asking the question, how you see the industry adapting to change. That's what we're going to talk about. And so I wanted to talk real quick about adaptation. I like the standard dictionary definition, a composition rewritten into a new form. But there's also this definition, modification of an organism or its parts that makes it more fit for existence under the conditions of its environment, a heritable physical or behavioral trait that serves a specific function and improves the organism's fitness or for survival. I know, that's a lot. But when you think of the industry in these terms, I think it's compelling. How are we to survive as individuals and as co-creators in an ever-changing system? So Beck, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
On that heavy note. Can you explain your arc from compositor to visual problem solver? How did the job change for you, and why did you take it in the direction that you have?
Okay, but keep me on task, please. So I'm a compositing supervisor, and for those people who don't know what compositing is...
Close.
Oh, sorry. For those people who don't know what compositing is, it's combining all the elements so it looks like it's been shot through the same lens. And for a very long time, I'm one of those people who pivoted kind of midway through my career into compositing. And it's because I've followed what my brain likes to do best. And I discovered that I was a visual problem solver, and that gave me excitement and joy in my life. So from a background in teaching art in secondary school, so teaching woodwork and technology studies, they would call it, and metalwork, I decided that I loved teaching but hated schools. Got out of that real fast, pivoted into multimedia and design, and then decided that PowerPoint presentations were not the funnest thing to do. So on the sly, I studied compositing and really realised it gave me the artistic kick that, say, life drawing gave me. And it was a really satisfying feeling to be able to problem solve and problem solve in a visual manner.
It's wonderful. Joe, you came from different roots, right? Can you explain your arc from math and computer science to your current role?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did come in through quite a different route. I did math and computer science at university. I got a computer science master's, so very technical route into the industry. And I I finished my master's and did not know what to do. I traveled around the world for a year. That didn't really solve it at all, but I had a great time. And then a friend of a friend showed me a sizzle reel for a company in London, and I just looked at it and my eyes lit up, this visual effects, and I was like, what is this magic? Like this, that's what I want to do. And the company had openings for render anglers. So I applied, had absolutely no idea what a render angler did. And this is going back nearly 20 years, so Auntie Google was not particularly helpful either in terms of figuring it out. But I went for the job, and it was a lot of night shifts, and I worked my butt off. But that led to me being able to move sideways onto the more creative side of things. I initially started render angler and then into pipeline, and moved into lighting, and then the rest, as they say, is history. But I think to kind of come back to your original question, Naida, like the thing that I love about the industry is that you have art here. Like, I guess I'm drawing a Venn diagram, and you've got technology over here, and it's this almond-shaped spot in the middle where this magic happens, and that's where we all exist, and that's where I love to be. Yeah.
Bex, so what about your path? Can you explain again exactly what you do, and then I'll ask you a follow-up question after that.
So I'm a millennial, sorry. And I had a little bit more of a sort of linear path that at school just, wanted to be an artist. I binge watched Disney films all day long. I've grew up as Pixar had their sort of, they were created, and that was my what was my platform to look at the entire way through. And I wish I could remember the point where I was like, I want a job doing that. I used to watch credits all the time, and you used to pick out the names, and you sort of like see them roll, and you never actually, especially if you grow up in a quirky little town in the UK like I did, and you never actually envision yourself being that person in the credit. And even now, I get such a kick out of it. Like, I think I cry on every credit I get. I got real emotional just watching on Wētā's sizzle reel in there. I was like, yeah. Yeah, it was amazing. But I just sort of, I went to university, and I was sort of really lucky that I found this technology and animation. And for someone who, we were talking about last night, for someone who had to take extra math lessons because I wasn't naturally good at math, but I found myself in this technical field where my creativity is, so useful. And I'm able to sort of use both, as you said, find that middle ground, and be part of technological breakthroughs like Avatar. It's a dream come true, and I still pinch myself a lot of the time that I'm here.
Do you think, as a millennial, perhaps, that you have to excel all the time to find yourself working on a project like Avatar: Way of the Water?
Yes, yeah. I think I don't know if it's particularly a woman thing or, if it is the millennial thing. I come from a sort of working class background, and, to say to my dad, who is a plumber electrician, I want to be an artist, was just like, well, what's your trade? How do you make your money? Not making money and not be living like, from the panels before, I grew up with a family full of love and stuff like that. And I really loved that sort of conversation. But, my parents worked very hard to give me everything, and, to have an income was the main goal. So I feel like I work a lot to make sure that that's always there, putting my hand up for those extra hours and doing those extra tasks. But something's built into me to have that work ethic, and albeit from my home or from my genetic makeup or, from this sort of how hard it is sometimes to get a chance in this sort of this industry, in this path. Sort of every generation it's getting a little bit harder and harder for XYZ reasons. And, if you're not going the extra mile all the time, you sometimes feel like you will get left behind. So it is sort of just something that you feel naturally, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I put my hand up, otherwise I'll be overlooked, or, yeah.
Did you two also experience that to some extent, Beck and Joe?
I think from my point of view, I actually came from almost completely opposite working class, but I grew up on a like almost hippie commune kind of situation, and so had no expectations of career path and no pressure. And my mother kind of built houses before she studied architecture, and my dad was an inventor. So it's really like off-piste. So I worked hard because I had to kind of go sideways a lot, and found when you get that chance, you really have to try and prove yourself. I actually got my first go in the industry at a company called Rising Sun in Adelaide, and I had to fake a holiday to get an interview. So I kind of emailed them and said, I'm going to be in Adelaide for the weekend. Would you happen to like to see my folio? And they went, oh, well, if you're going to be here, then yes. And it's like, I'll book the flight right now. So your complete subterfuge of like just trying to get someone to talk to you about getting in there and having a chance. So, and once you get that chance, you've just got to hang on to it and work real hard to prove yourself. Same sort of thing.
Joe?
Yeah, I can definitely resonate with the feeling like you have to do everything and do it perfectly. Like, I think it's Brené Brown uses the term a recovering perfectionist. I'm like, yep, hello. I was probably a perfectionist before I got into the industry, you know, straight A student, always rewarded for that kind of achievement. And then you get into the visual effects industry and you realize like everyone is a perfectionist. You know, you're looking at a frame on screen that needs to go in a movie and you're evaluating to the finest detail the specular component because it needs to look photoreal. And you're in this environment where actually you kind of need to be a perfectionist to like create work of the quality that we do, but it's dangerous. So dangerous.
Sounds like it. Beck, did you have a mentor, and did he teach you how to fail? I knew it was a man ahead of time.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of have the profession. It was really interesting. I was trying to explain to a secondary school student what I did. And apart from the obvious stuff, oh, we've got to make this look like it's been shot through the camera, you know, it was trying to describe the problem-solving part of it. And it was like, well, I kind of fail until I succeed. And it was a really strange way of putting it, but it's, I mean, I was talking about a shot that I was doing on Alita where it took me a week to find out how to do it. And so each decision I made until the end of that week was failing until I succeeded. So, and with a teacher's background, my training is it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fail because failure is a path to success. It is just the road that you haven't taken because it doesn't get you the result that you want. So in fact, failure for me is really, really necessary because it teaches you not to go down that path. It teaches you to take the right one. And so all my mentors have been, they know this, and it's really great to have it reinforced that it's okay to fail, and it's a really necessary part of what we do.
Bex, what about you? Did you have a mentor?
I have really amazing mentors, and I've been very lucky, and they all have been men. And but we were talking about this sort of yesterday, and I actually think it's super important because there's been a lot of the times, like even in university, that I was the only girl in the room. And I think sometimes when you're the only girl in a room, and a lot of the time, yeah, on shows and stuff like that, whether we are, you know, you can be the only female in the room, but you have to stand your ground, and it's so hard sometimes. But I have a lot of mentors and men in leadership who support me and who, you know, don't treat me as the only girl in the room. I'm not the one taking the notes. I'm the artist with the ideas, and I'm the artist with the input. And I think having those people have been, you know, detrimental to my career path. My application to Wētā was put by my previous boss who, you know, was practically, I was like, you know, doing that classic, oh, I'm not good enough, I can't do it, I can't move across the world. And, you know, it literally was just like, you you have to try it, you have to take that chance. And being sort of, I signed up for 6 months at Wētā, and it's been 6 years, and it's because the people who have been there have supported me. And it's amazing to have female sort of, you know, mentors, and I hope that I can become one. For, you know, but it is, again, it's like, it's about supporting a person because you see something in them, and I'm really lucky that I've had that for, owe them a lot.
Absolutely. Joe, what is your experience in failing, and did you have a mentor?
Yeah, I'll tackle the mentor one first. So this was a really interesting one for me. When I moved into a position of leadership a number of years ago, I looked around me in search of a mentor. I'm a great believer in find someone who does something really well and, you know, learn, steal whatever you can from them. And to be honest, I saw myself surrounded by predominantly male supervisors who supervised in a way that just, I knew that style wouldn't feel authentic to me. I would call it like the loudest voice in the room style, for want of a better phrase. And I found that really hard because not only did I feel like I was lacking that mentor, but it also made me doubt, is my style gonna work here? You know, I don't see a proven example of that out there. So I searched and searched and searched, and more recently I've been very, very lucky to find a female mentor with a huge amount of experience, and her style completely resonates with me. We have wonderful conversations, and I'm incredibly grateful for her. So it's been a journey, but I do now have that, you know, guidance that really resonates with me. And then failure. Oh, failure. As a recovering perfectionist, that's a really tricky one. But I do feel, and especially talking around the subject of adaptability, a big part of that is becoming comfortable with failure. Like, you can't push the boundaries of what you're doing, and to adapt, you do need to push the boundaries of what you're doing and find different ways to do that. And by default, like, failure has to be a part of that. I think it was Edison who said, I didn't fail, I just found 1,000 ways that it won't work. And that rings true here for sure. So yes, failure is a huge part of that, and I've definitely experienced a good amount of it over the years, and I'm learning to become more comfortable with it, shall we say.
All of us. No, all three of you have teams, are in supervisory roles. I'm going to start with a question for you, Beck. How do you help people find their own grounding at work? Can you unpack the difference in a tech lead, a creative lead, and the need for a people need?
Yeah, I found it very interesting, particularly pre-COVID, post-COVID, where I was before COVID, I was had a mentor to be a compositing supervisor, and the job after COVID is so much different in regards to how much time you need to spend communicating over Teams or Zoom, and as a introvert who puts on a jacket to be an extrovert and a supervisor at the same time, I find a lot of my effort and energy goes into communicating with people. So for me, it's really important to have people that support my role, and so to be very honest about my strengths and weaknesses. I would say I'm a more creative compositor, I'm more artistic, I come from that kind of background, and so I need a creative lead, but I also need a very good, strong technical lead. But post-COVID, I now try and find people on my team who will help support people in my team. So I try to find a people lead in my team so I don't have to be involved in every conversation on Teams, and that they can filter for me. They can let people decompress, talk about their problems without a supervisor watching them, and then she filters generally to me the problems that people are having and let me know, oh, you need to talk to this person, they're having a problem with A, B, and C. So I find that immensely helpful, and it takes away the pressure of feeling like you have to communicate all the time. Because if I have to do that all day, I have no room for my craft.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's people leads are incredibly important.
They are. Bex, as having a team, do you ever feel, and I think all three of you might experience this, the need for them to, for you to receive feedback? So is that awkward sometimes? Do you find like you have to be in a certain state of mind to make sure that they know that you are able to receive negative feedback, if so, or constructive criticism?
Yeah, I think you get quite close. You get very close when our team grew immensely over working on Avatar, and I think I suffered from that, people thinking that things were a lot easier for me than maybe they were, from like, it's kind of like that social media effect that maybe you only post the highlights. So for me, it's like, oh my God, I did this, and oh my God, I did that. And then it's not. It's a lot of hours that go on behind the scenes that, contribute towards all that work. And then I have a lot of, like juniors coming to me now on my team, and we have this sort of amazing, diverse group of juniors. But, and they're doing exactly what I did, and they're like, I want to do that, and I want to be you. And I have to now navigate how to help them. And as you progress in your career, you take on more of these leadership roles. And at the end of the day, you were a person who was like, I want to make things, and suddenly you have this like managerial responsibility. And it's a really hard thing to sort of navigate, and you can naturally be that person, or you can have to, it needs to be taught to you, I think, in a way. And it's sort of, and as I say, balancing that extrovert introvert sort of balance that all of us have in us, in either way. So for me, it's feedback. It's knowing that I'm helping my team as other people helped me, and receiving feedback to sort of just to sort of next time have it planted in your head. So if a scenario comes up and you're like, oh, that could have been done better this time, in any aspect, even if it's just a pipeline thing or a personal thing, it always just like planting little things correctly, so that it can be better next time. Because ultimately, in VFX, we all work together, and it's that whole thing. It's like, you're remembered you want to be remembered for the right reasons as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And Joe, what's the value of being comfortable being uncomfortable in the workplace in terms of demands put upon you and your interaction with your colleagues?
I think it's huge, actually. I'm going to tie off the back of Beck's comments on feedback, because I think that's a huge space where being comfortable, being uncomfortable is incredibly valuable in giving and receiving feedback. I think everyone has a blind spot. There's no way you can see yourself truly as everyone else does, because, you can only see it from your own viewpoint. So reaching out for that feedback on yourself, like really you want the challenging feedback. You want to hear that. You want to hear that candid feedback, because that's what helps you grow. And there's a huge amount of discomfort in hearing that, right? Our initial response is already very defensive. But I think also giving feedback, like whenever I gave feedback, I can't remember the polite word for it, but it's where you do good feedback and just sandwich.
Yeah, at first.
Crap bit in the middle, right?
It's a sandwich, I think they call it. Yeah.
Let's just call it the sandwich. I would do that, and because why? Because it was easier for me, and I felt like it was easier for the other person to hear. But a number of years ago, someone gave me a bit of advice. They're like, tell it to them straight. And I have done that since, and it's harder. It's a much harder conversation. But what I found is that people actually take it better, because they see the sandwich coming, right? They're like, what are you leading up to here?
Yeah, it's almost worse.
Yeah.
Pull the Band-Aid off.
Yeah. So there's a big element of being comfortable with discomfort there, but the outcome is better because of it. Yeah.
Now, I want to talk about how you three want to build a feeder system of more women in the visual effects arena, and also your experience working in the field. And I'm going to start with you, Bex. You play a critical role. Bex, yes, I know, I'm jumping around. You play a critical role in the creation of computer-generated facial animation. How much does your gut play a role in creating emotionally engaging characters?
Well, I'm a very emotional, engaging character myself. I always say, because we're an animator, and I remember I got a piece of advice years and years ago, and it was kind of like, you should always go to work as yourself. And I remember because I was sort of like pivoting the way I was to sort of fit into this sort of, sort of maybe even to like diminishing myself, thinking that I shouldn't be the loud, giggly girl in the room, or I shouldn't be I shouldn't wear that, or, or somebody going to judge me because I said this, or, and, when you're authentically yourself, that's when you're sort of your best self most of the time.
Agree.
And I sort of was thinking like my emotions are literally what I'm trying to put into my work. So I need to have them. I need to know that I'm an emotional person. I'm emotionally passionate about what I do. And I think that also blurs that line of when I'm, going the extra mile. And the thing I would give advice, and it's not just to sort of young women wanting to be in this industry, or it's to anyone. There is absolutely no better high than going to work and loving what you do.
Right.
And I love what I do, and I just get such a kick out of it. I went to that was it. I went to see Avatar in 2009. Loved it. Watched it about 10 million times, and I've done that thing where I got to work on what I wanted to do, and it's not going to be the path for everyone where everything works that way, but to say to my friends back in my quirky little hometown, there is an opportunity out there, and there is a whole world out there, and there's really cool jobs, and your job doesn't have to be all the time something that is just to pay the bills.
Yeah, a grind.
And it's really nice to pay the bills, but it's like it's really awesome to sort of have to spend X amount of hours doing something that your brain just loves, and that would be something that I would just try and say to young girls, like, find what that is. And, and it might be that, yeah, you do have to take those extra maths lessons to sort of get ahead of it, but it's so worth it.
That's good. Joe, can you talk about the need for personal life boundaries when you moved into a supervisory role, becoming the hub for information?
Yes, I definitely can. So I moved into the CG supervisor role, which is a role I've been doing for a few years now, the role I had on Guardians Volume 3. I moved into that, and at the time I had a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. So, and I think it was COVID lockdown, just to add another level of crazy to the mix.
Oh.
Yeah. And I had concerns over how that was gonna look. I was, once you get to that level, hours supporting the team, there's a number of complications that small kids add to the mix. But I had to be courageous and had to remove that element of feeling like you're failing because you're saying, hey, I don't want to do.
Yeah.
I can't do the big hours here. I've got another team at home that also need me. And I had some very honest conversations with my managers at the time, and I'm lucky they were extremely supportive. And I put boundaries in place. So I leave to be home at 6 p.m. every night to have dinner with my kids, because if I didn't, I would not see them until Saturday. And sometimes I'll pop back online at 8 o'clock in the evening because, it's necessary. But in doing that, I think the thing that I've also realized over the past few years is that in doing that, you're not only servicing your own needs, and I'm a better supervisor because I have that boundary in place. I'm also setting an example for other people on the team to show that, you can do a great job, you can succeed with boundaries in place that protect you and the other things in your life that you care about.
Wonderful. Beck, why is it important to you that girls see a path to working in this sector of the industry, and how do you add outreach to your workload?
It's very important to me to see a path because I didn't see a path for myself.
I see.
And so I had to make my own path. And in doing that, and also I have a 13-year-old daughter now, so I realised when she was about 4 or 5, I had a massive epiphany of, if I don't change it for her, then it's not going to change.
Sure.
And so making sure that other women can see you doing the job well and succeeding and being vocal about it and being very, very visible about it. I've taken that on, so I am a path, I am a touchstone for people to contact. I'm happy to look at people's reels and do that sort of thing if they're trying to get into the industry, because I know what it was like for myself trying to get into the industry. So it is that kind of really, really deeply personal decision of,
That's a lot.
I can see the change that I need to do for my own daughter, but also it feeds into the fact that I can reach down and make sure if I'm climbing the ladder that I don't pull it up with me, that I reach down and I help other women up.
That's really good. And it seems like that is a lot of effort. I mean, you know, if you're reaching out to youngsters, how young? Are you going into primary school?
I'd actually like to do that a lot more. Personally, because originally I was a woodwork and metalwork teacher, I was very happy that my daughter got to spend 3 years in a kind of, STEM class, weekend STEM class, and that was great. Because she needed to see the opportunity of playing with, electronics and woodwork and metalwork. And so even at that stage, I realised that she was only like of 5 kids in the class, of 5 classes that were in this little STEM hub. She was the first girl to do it and the only girl at that stage.
Wow.
And that, again, another epiphany, was that if I don't change it now, then it stays that way. So that realisation has made me extremely vocal about education and going to see kids at schools. So I've given several talks to secondary schools on career days. And particularly in Wellington, it's very strange. We have a lot of single-sex schools, so there's lots of girls' schools. And I've talked to them and trying to talk to career teachers to say how many girls are going into STEM. And it's really dispiriting for me to hear that, they don't really consider it cool or, that sort of thing. It's just like, no, it's awesome. Yeah. So if I can just reach one girl in that talk who can see that there's a path to a really cool arts and technology-based career, then I will keep talking and talking and talking. But I do realise that I would love to start it a lot earlier. I think we need to start in primary school. I think we need to start with girls before they are teenagers, because it just gets their hands on electronics or whatever their STEM area would like to be, and it gets them used to doing it. And so the one thing that my daughter, being the one of 5 in a class, means if this is going to continue, she's used to already being the minority, and that crushes my spirit. So I really need to change that.
Obviously we're talking about women, we're talking about girls, but I think with those efforts by women like you, it also brings a parity to young boys who might want to be in a field that's generally not filled with men. It's just like an equal opportunity in any of the classrooms. And I think that's an important part of it. As a mother of sons, have a different kind of, perspective in terms of what I was teaching, what I teach them every day. And so just wanted to make that note.
Can I add to that? Because we were talking about that last night. So I have 3 beautiful nephews.
Yep.
And one of them turned around one day and I came home wearing my Star Wars crew gear. And they were like, "Oh, Auntie Becca, Star Wars is for boys.
Oh,
And I was like, sit down.
fighting
Sit
word.
down. And that was it. And it's nothing that my sister or anyone in our immediate family have done, because but it's the peers from school. And it's just that it's ingrained from such a young age. And I remember being in school and, being bullied because I was into the geeky stuff, and bullied because I wanted to excel. And
Right.
it wasn't cool to want to succeed.
Yeah,
And I mean, what a
exactly.
horrible thing to to put into children. And even now it's sort of, and it comes into your adult life where you do achieve something and you're like, oh, because you're like, oh my God, are people going to laugh at me because I've done well? And I think that's it. And every achievement and stuff like that, we tend to sort of diminish ourselves because we don't want to celebrate it, because is that the cool thing to do? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of qualities that are very loud, so I'm always trying to pull it in. But I just crow like crazy all the time, so I always have the opposite. But so I have two things I tell young people who are doing anything in our business and they want any kind of advice. And the first one is show up. And then the second one is careful what you're good at. And what do these notions mean to each of you? And I'll start with Joe.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was the
Show up.
question?
I know.
What?
So if somebody says, so if you're talking to somebody coming in,
I've got
what does it mean to you to like show up
I'm-
and
I'm-
careful what you're good at?
All right, I'm with the program. I think as soon as she said show up, I was like, yes, that. Because half the battle sometimes is actually just giving it a crack, right?
Right.
And to do that, this comes back to being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Right.
Accepting that maybe you're not going to do it perfectly, maybe you're not going to do it in the way you dreamed about, but if you go and try, that in itself is definitely an achievement, almost certainly a learning experience. So yeah, I think show up is a great phrase. Yeah.
And it's
absolutely.
easy to not go to that event. Everybody's here. It's fantastic, but it's a lot. Just got to drive. We got to do that, and it's sometimes, especially if you're slightly introverted, it's hard to do that, I think. And do you understand what I mean by careful what you're good at?
I was like, for both of them, I'm the queen of fake it till you make it. Like, it's just, yeah. It's amazing how many people you say that to, and they're like, I'm faking it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and oh my
Yeah.
God, I didn't know what I was doing. Yeah. And that's it. And so showing up is, I think I've done that as well. Even coming here today, it was a little part of me was like, oh, I can't do that. And then it's just like coming here and having people supporting you to know you can actually bring something to the table. Be careful what you're good at.
I'll tell you what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you'll get a job doing, you get in your industry, but then you kind of get pigeonholed. You're so good at this one thing, then you don't get promoted because you're so valuable at that, but maybe you want to do this. So my thing is like, just be careful you don't get just completely buried in this one thing you're so good at and you're just constantly getting applause for, where you might want to be more valuable doing something else.
I think there's a really interesting parallel in regards to how, you were talking about feeders to our industry before,
Right.
and how the lack of crossover that you're working at a company. We've got how many people at Wētā? Like almost 2,000 people, yeah. And we've got an amazing range of skills, so diverse.
Yeah.
I remember doing, sorry, I'm going to go a segue here, but I did a talk on compositors and where they came from. So I had 3 careers before I got into VFX. I was a teacher and I was a multimedia designer for advertising, and then I kind of snuck into compositing. And you see that a lot. Like we had compositors, one was a professional BMX rider, one was a US Marine, like incredible diverse range of experiences. But you look at our, the kind of our industry or our company, and what I would like to see for the future is being able to cross over more, being able to feed various, like if you get into production, and you get to know the company, and this I think is for any company, is that person knows a lot about what you do and the structure of your company. I'm a compositor. I'm right at the end of the process, and I don't know what the beginning of I don't know what Bex does. I just know that I get it eventually, and I have to comp it.
I'm on the capture end. I know all about that part.
But I'd love to see more crossover of, and again, this is a kind of we have a large population of women in production and not in artist roles. And what I want to see happen is if you get into a company and in production role and you go, actually, I really want to be an artist.
Right.
I want to see more crossover like that. I want to see more feeders. I want you to be able to diversify in your own career like that and pivot where you need to. So, yeah.
Love that. And I want to make sure to open it up to any questions from this point forward. If anybody has any questions, just raise up your hand. There's one in the back.
Danny, your talk was so awesome. Yeah, thank you.
On. Am I on?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Speak.
So there was a New York Times article last week that specifically talked about how women couch their questions in meetings, and we couch them in the language of being a little bit more demure, right? I don't think I'm on, but it's okay. And that we always tell women, don't do that. You shouldn't do that. But when they don't do it, they are seen as aggressive. So I'm wondering how you find that line, because it's a line for me too, right? Like sometimes I know I'm using it and I'm using it. I know that I can get people to do the thing I want by using that demure method. And so I'm wondering how you have found that, especially in a company that is so diverse and has a lot of women who would definitely catch on to what you were doing. I'm wondering how that works for you.
Yeah, that's such an interesting topic because, again, I'm actually looking into it in how we communicate online as well through Teams and that sort of thing, and how women were traditionally coached. We always felt like we had to put exclamation points after everything just to make it friendly. But now, because we're using it, I heard all of you. And how we overdo that so we seem nice. But now it's really interesting. There's a great Erica Darwin. I'll find it. It's great. But she's written a book on how we really need to do that. We're a lot more experienced at it, but it really helps everyone feel like they're the culture of the conversation is taken right. So we're not over, and I'm not talking women, I'm talking everybody. Like, you see the exclamation point left off and you go, oh my God, that's really, really serious. What have I done? So I know exactly what you're talking about. I come from a family, I've got 3 younger brothers. So I kind of felt like I was made for VFX. And being a teacher also, I do know when I put on my female, can I ask you to blah blah blah, but a lot of the time I'm like, no, you're going to do that, because I have a teacher's background, so I'm used to bossing people around, and I'm an older sister, and it's like, no, you're not doing that. You're going to do what I'd say. So I am a lot more aware of it, but I push myself to be more assertive, and I think once you kind of get into that and live that a bit and are authentic about it, I find it much easier to get people to do what I need them to do.
It's hard though, right? Because assertive women sometimes get a bad rep.
I'm going to be a bit sweary.
Yeah.
Because sorry, Bex, but
No,
I love VFX because I can be my true self, and I'm a very sweary person, and I'm all out of fucks for those people, So, yeah.
Yeah, that. Yeah, and that's it. It's like, I end my sentences a lot of the time with, does that make sense? Does that make sense?
So much.
Oh, I've told you something that I've studied and I know everything about, but does that make sense? And and it's naturally, and it's like, it's such a balance. And I wonder, do my male counterparts have that? Do they have that internal monologue of either does it make sense, or I've just said this, but my tone hurt you? Like, that's it. Sometimes it's such a balance. And I'm like, do they worry about how that's, and sometimes I'm up at night going, did I say that right in that meeting? And it's just a thing because, I think that's it. We have this sort of visual sort of parade that we sometimes have to put on, even though I don't turn my camera on Teams. So, so the smiley face is there instead. Yeah.
Right. Any other questions? You have a question?
I'm just wondering when people say to you, all of you, you're such a strong woman, or you're a boss lady, or any of that stuff, if you have good answers.
I just say, fuck yeah.
We had made a joke yesterday because I'm really tall. I love wearing boots. I'm actually really strong. I do at 45. I'm really strong. So I just say that, I do that to if that makes you uncomfortable, then I'm really happy. Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I think just like being yourself, right? Like being yourself and finding your own style of leadership, and whether that looks what people are used to seeing in terms of the definition of leadership, it kind of doesn't matter. Like if you're you and you're treating people right and you're, being a great leader, then that's like a strong woman, right? Yeah.
I will add, like, strong woman is that usual thing, and like I love Wonder Woman, so that's my aspiration. But strong women doesn't mean that you can't be a vulnerable woman. It means, again, like, going back, that you can't be someone who, that fails, that you can't be someone who didn't quite get it right, or said something wrong. And I think that's it. Just strong also leads back to the ideal of perfectionism, that to be the strong role model, that people are always constantly looking at you to be the strong woman. And we break a lot, and it's like, to show that vulnerability sometimes is actually a really nice thing for younger people, because they can go, oh, she's not perfect, or fantastic, I don't have to be perfect too. And I think that's what I see. And I learn a lot from my sort of younger generation as well, to sort of allow that to come through, because when you do break, you show someone else it's okay to do the same.
Right. That was beautifully said.
Thank you.
It was beautifully said. I mean, and I'm always balancing it here, but I mean, I love Ted Lasso, and I didn't want to watch it. I ended up watching it, and then you realize that there's a lot of what you just said for those men. So much about that script was of them, again, being able to break, being vulnerable. That one character was hilarious. And, the other thing that we don't have time to talk about, but I find super interesting, it's leveraging your power. When you actually get to that place where you're going to risk, it's just on the line, and you are going to risk being, like a bitch or whatever somebody wants to call you for something, like probably morally. Have you guys ever had that happen to you?
Yeah, I was asked to give a performance review to my VFX supervisor, and I had noticed that he would ask male artists, what do you think, what else do you think you want to do to that shot? But he wouldn't ask female ones. And I don't think he did it consciously, but in his performance review, I told him that, and it was great because he immediately changed that behaviour and ended up making sure that women artists were asked as much of the time as male.
It's about communication. Well, y'all heard the beep, so we're got to scram. No, thank you guys so much, y'all, women, everybody.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Amazing. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
All right, thanks to everybody. Great job. Let's have one more big hand for a fabulous panel of powerful human beings.